Welcome to Media Thread, the video series where I cover my favorite media texts of the year and rank them as they appear. Today I will be talking about the classic 2003 video game Legacy of Kain, Defiance. I actually got into the Legacy of Kain franchise some years ago, as a friend of mine forced me to watch all the cutscenes of Soul Reaver 1 and 2 on YouTube. Although I appreciated the expert dialogue and intriguing storytelling in those cutscenes, I wasn't compelled to play the games back then. Fast forward to 2024 and Crystal Dynamics actually released a remastered collection of those two classics, which encouraged me to finally play them. I bought the collection at the start of 2025 and eventually played my way through them. Of course, the storytelling is sublime, but while I enjoyed the gameplay decently enough, it held the games back from making the media thread cut. Fortunately, Defiance decided to step up in that field while retaining the quality storytelling, making it a strong contender for this video series. Even though my friend wanted me to watch Defiance's cutscenes as well back in the day, I actually didn't, so this was a completely blind playthrough. I thus had no idea that you could play as Kain, which was a very pleasant surprise, and I love that you get to play as both him and Raziel as the story unfolds. They don't play very differently, but I don't mind, especially since this game easily has the best combat in the Legacy of Kain series. Well, I haven't played the two Blood Omen games, but I highly doubt they're better in that aspect. As for the games I have played, the first Soul Reaver's combat worked, but it was too stilted for me, and the fact that you would lose the Soul Reaver after just one hit became a huge annoyance at times. This problem fortunately got alleviated in Soul Reaver 2, which put more emphasis on combat, but its system felt very sloppy and unintuitive, prompting me to skip enemy encounters wherever possible. Defiance's combat, on the other hand, is so much fun that I chose to fight skippable enemies more often than not. The system isn't that deep, but it flows very well, especially as you unlock new abilities that give you more satisfying combo options. I love yanking an enemy towards me, throwing it up in the air, bouncing it off the ground, quickly slashing it in the air, and finishing the combo with a downward slash. I also feel like a badass finishing off enemies by either drinking their blood or consuming their soul depending on whether I'm Kain or Raziel. You'll need to do this as your health bar constantly drains, but it never feels unfair as there's usually a way to regain health, and when there isn't in certain boss fights for example, you're not dealt much damage anyway. This might make the game too easy for some, but at least dying in Defiance has more consequence than dying in the Soul Reaver games, since you're not just sent to the spectral realm upon death. While Defiance's gameplay mainly emphasizes combat, there's still some decent puzzle solving, platforming, and exploration sprinkled in. Soul Reaver 2 lacked collectibles, so it's nice that Defiance brought them back, with some that enhance your powers, and others that are necessary to progress through levels, in addition to some that give you access to cool behind-the-scenes stuff. I like how the progression items demand that you memorize each level's layout, even though navigating to the correct places can get confusing due to how expansive the levels can be, but adding a minimap with markers would have diminished the exploration factor. With all this in mind, the gameplay isn't perfect and becomes quite repetitive after a while. There's a lack of enemy variety, and given that there are a lot of enemies to fight throughout the game, the fun combat can grow stale over time. Visiting the Reaver Forges is cool, but there are so many of them, and they all have very similar layouts, so I eventually got tired of them. It doesn't help that their boss encounters are so similar too, and they're not that fun to fight in the first place, not helped by the restricted camera. Unlike the Soul Reaver games that had free camera controls, Defiance has fixed camera angles, which I imagine was a controversial decision. However, I kind of like this change, even though it causes some inevitable problems. It can definitely be disorienting moving through a level while the camera angle changes, and sometimes the perspective isn't ideal for enemy and boss encounters, not to mention platforming challenges. The worst case of this is this section right here where these earthen platforms only last for 7 seconds, and you're expected to get to an upper floor while dealing with the ever-changing camera. This is such a ludicrous design choice that I'm so glad didn't reoccur. In spite of these annoyances, I like the way these angles guided me through levels, and they made for very cinematic perspectives that fit right at home with the series. Defiance easily has the best atmosphere out of all the Legacy of Kain games, and this is coming from someone who's only played the remastered versions of Soul Reaver 1 and 2, whereas Defiance doesn't even have a remaster. No matter, because the game still looks good, which isn't surprising given that this is the most recent Legacy of Kain installment. The sound is also top notch, whether it be the eerie sound effects, the atmospheric soundtrack, or the incredible voiceover performances. I was stunned when I first experienced the spectral realm in this game. It's so haunting hearing these tortured souls scream out in agony while everything looks distorted. I sometimes struggle to get back into the game since I'm jamming to the main theme in the title screen. It's so catchy. I'm glued to the cutscenes due to staggering performances by the likes of Michael Bell, Simon Templeman, and Tony Jay. They truly enhance the storytelling's presentation.
And now you will see the true enemy.
Raziel. And it was then I saw.
So, I am revealed to you at last.
What in hell?
That said, I must admit that I wasn't quite as engaged with the cutscenes of Defiance as I was with the Soul Reaver cutscenes, especially 2 where just about every single scene had me completely invested. Apparently the head writer Amy Hennig left during Defiance's development to join Naughty Dog, so that might explain why the dialogue doesn't hit as hard as it did in the Soul Reaver games. And I guess it doesn't help that many of the cutscenes are of Kain and Raziel monologuing their interpretations of murals they find. However, I do love the split perspectives, and when they start conversing with more characters towards the end of the game, the cutscenes step up considerably. The dialogue becomes more interesting, and so does the storytelling as so many crazy twists start happening, including a fight to the death between both playable characters. This is easily the best boss fight in the series, and it's essentially 2 fights, since you first fight Raziel as Kain, then Kain as Raziel. It's so cool that you're attacked with attacks you've used throughout the game, and it was actually fairly tough to beat them, since they seemed to ramp up near the end. I thought the game would end with Kain and Raziel teaming up right after their fight, but I was very satisfied with how the game actually ended. I was initially bummed out when Raziel killed Kain, but then it turned out Kain was only sent to a different realm, and he got to kill Mobius, sending him to the spectral realm where Raziel could finish the job. Such a satisfying comeuppance. Raziel then used Mobius's corpse to reanimate himself and have Kain kill him on purpose, so that Raziel could become the paradoxical weapon that can destroy the Elder God, and by extension, the Wheel of Fate. It was so cool that I got to fight the Elder God using Raziel as Kain's Soul Reaver, and while he hasn't been beaten yet, it's an uplifting ending that gives Kain hope for his coin to land on its edge. Defiance is unfortunately the final game in the Legacy of Kain franchise, but to be honest, this isn't such a bad place to leave things on. And who knows, with the recent release of the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remaster, there may yet be hope for a conclusion to this unfinished story. If that ever happens, I hope that Amy Hennig returns, and that she hasn't lost the magic that made Legacy of Kain storytelling so great. Tossing it into the Media Thread 2025 ranking, Legacy of Kain Defiance lands on its edge, sandwiching in between Dark and Andor. It's a banger, but Dark remains supreme as I've foreseen. I'm Arcadon, and hopefully, you'll see me next time!